How's it going, everyone? My name is Zepp and welcome back to the channel. Now today I have a review for you of the game The Cycle Frontier. Now those of you who are regulars on the channel may find it a little weird that I'm doing something video game related here, considering the content that has been going up on this channel as of late, and I do have a separate Zepp Gaming channel. However, considering my upload schedule has been a bit infrequent at the moment, and this is still a video that falls under a review or a reaction style type of video, I feel like it's worth just putting up on this channel just until I'm back at things full time, and then maybe I'll throw content like this back onto the gaming channel. But for now, I want to stick with putting videos up on this channel, which is why you're seeing this video here. The Cycle Frontier may seem like quite a random game for me to be reviewing, but for those of you who watch my content over on Twitch, you will know that I put in over 100 hours into this beta, and I have to say I really enjoyed it. However, the reason why I'm making this review isn't just to completely pander to the game and say how perfect it is. It's a very good beta with very good potential, something that I really enjoyed. However, there were issues in there as well, and I feel like it would be just a good idea to make a video talking about all the things, such as how much I loved it, but also just kind of addressing some of the issues and getting them out there for the developers to even know going into the full game release, or if they do another beta. I presume it'll be a full game release coming next, but just so that they know about these issues if one of them happens to stumble across this video, because they do seem to have quite an engaging community, both in terms of fans of the game and the developers themselves in terms of listening to fan feedback, which is evident by the updates that they made to the game throughout the course of the beta to improve various aspects of it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now this is not largely, it's completely unscripted. I had no real plan going into this. It's just a game that I wanted to talk about after the beta ended, and I just felt like I would rant about it, because ranting just seems to be the style that works for me more than anything, because when I go to script stuff, I end up taking way too long at it, and it ends up being not very good, except for my video on The Last of Us, which you can check out on this channel. It's a great video, trust me. Right, so The Cycle Frontier. Going into The Cycle Frontier, I was very much a noob at not just obviously The Cycle Frontier, because I'd never played it before or any of the previous betas, but I never really played games that were of a similar style to this. Like, let's get it out of the way right now. In terms of the similarities that you can draw between this game and another game, the number one game that does come to mind is Tarkov. Now, it does have a lot of differences, which I'll get into further on in this video, but essentially what you have is a game where you start off at a base, you barter with traders to get challenges, sell items, buy items from them as you rank up the levels with that trader, and you go into the certain maps to do those tasks while also trying to either avoid or kill other prospectors who could be on the map with you at the same time. So very similar to sort of a Tarkov style format. This sort of, I actually don't know what the name would be. I'm just going to refer to it as a Tarkov format for now, because that seems to be the most popular game doing the rounds. It looks like in future, at least in terms of the PC space and depending where consoles go, this could be the new craze that battle royales were, that H1Z1, PUBG and Fortnite kind of really hit the nail on the head with back in 2016, 2017. This definitely feels like it could be the new wave, and The Cycle seems like a game that is offering a sort of easier, more accessible version of this, while also having a steep learning curve, and feels like something that will transition over to consoles and a mainstream audience way better than even the likes of Tarkov would. So this game has a lot going for it already in terms of what you might call hopping on the bandwagon with the style of video games. Now, as I said, I went into this game as a real noob. Like, I never, as of recording this, I never got into Tarkov. I never liked Tarkov, the main reason being that I could never really get into keyboard and mouse playing. I will be giving it a go, probably actually right after this recording, because I missed playing this style of game after The Cycle, which I suppose is a good sign. But so, when I'm talking about this game and I'm talking about how I like this game, and you may be sitting there humming and hawing about playing games like this or getting The Cycle Frontier when it comes out in full release, and you may be thinking, well, you know, games like this, even though it works on controller, I really should be playing keyboard and mouse, and I'm useless with keyboard and mouse, so there's no point. Take it from me, as someone who's played just competitive Call of Duty and then a bunch of story games, all on PlayStation, all with a controller, I could not use keyboard and mouse to save my life, and I went into this game with no knowledge of how to use it, and after the 100 hours put into it, I've come out of it pretty decent. Not the best by any means, but that's where I get into one of my first positives of a game like this, and something that the Cycle Frontier does really well. You do not have to be amazing at these games in comparison to other players in the player base to reap the rewards of the online experience. When you start this game, you can go on and get a bunch of challenges done in terms of killing easier creatures, finding things, all the stuff you would expect from games such as these in terms of quests, helping you get the knowledge of the map and the AI that you face in this game, the AI being the monsters. I am kind of talking about this game from a perspective of that you already know the basics of the game. I'm not going to explain the real basics about how you're on a planet and there's monsters, yada yada yada. I presume if you're looking this up, you already kind of have an idea. This is more of sort of a positive and negatives about the game itself, but yeah, it really introduces you quite easily to the world. The tasks aren't too hard to begin with. It starts to ask you to kill prospectors after a couple challenges. However, it's not too severe and it is manageable. And you will always find it tough. But when you progress a certain amount and you look back on the challenges that you had, you will sort of not realize how easy it was in comparison. But for me personally, at least, I just felt like as my skill grew, the skill that the game required grew accordingly, so it always felt like a fresh and challenging experience. While the game does have this fresh and challenging experience, as I just said, this is where I'm going to phase in one of the negatives I have about the game, and I think one of the big things that will need addressed for the full release, and that is the skill-based matchmaking. Now, as far as I'm aware from interacting a little bit with the community, I haven't been the best at interacting with the community. I have popped into a couple of Twitch streams, and that has been about it. But someone did say, or a couple of people said to me, that the way it places you in lobbies is based off your median loot score. And considering the game had cheaters, which is sort of another negative, but I'll go into that more a little later, it made the game be, or the skill of the game be, something that you seek to manipulate rather than just being placed into it naturally, right? I mean, a lot of these good players, they're taking out good loot and they find, right, okay, this is going up, so I'm being put in with these really sweaty players and ultimately I'm just here to loot, so I'm going to do knife runs to lower my median loot, going in with the knife, getting straight to the evac, going in with no loot to lower that score. However, they would say that you need to be careful when lowering the score, because if you lower it too low, you're going to end up being in with the cheaters, because a lot of the cheaters will go into the game not really looking to get loot, they're just going in to get kills with the really strong guns. And that is unfortunately where I found myself by the end of the beta. I absolutely love the beta. I'm sitting here saying, like, it's one of the best games I've played in a long time in terms of the amount of enjoyment per hour I got out of it. My God, towards the end it got bad with the cheaters for me, and I think that was because the loot that I was bringing out, I was the type of guy that would just always loot on my way to an evac rather than really going out of my way to get certain stuff done. I was very objective focused and getting the basic stuff got, so I think I had a low enough amount of loot to where I ended up being matched in with these cheaters who were looking for kills, and I found myself being killed quite a lot towards the end, especially by cheaters. So I do think the game moving forward needs to have a more complex skill-based matchmaking system, and they either have to mix everything together in terms of the amount of kills you get, where you go, the areas, the monsters you're killing, etc, etc, or they have to really decide what they want to the player to value in the game. Do they really want it so loot based that they're going to really focus on focusing on multiple loot elements, or do they want it based off the player kills and then have it all based off your prospector engagements and how many kills you got per game, etc, etc. I am of the personal opinion that it should take everything, but should be more leaning towards your prospector interactions. Prospectors being enemies, by the way, the other player enemies instead of the AI enemies. Because at the end of the day, you're being matched in with these people. When you spawn in with monsters, the monster spawns are always going to be the same. The loot variety and rarity is always going to be around the same. So if they're making the skill-based matchmaking based off the loot, and then because of that they're throwing you in with tougher players, they're things that don't necessarily correlate. Like, you can be a bad player at this game and get a lot of loot, just provided you play slower or you play a certain way. It's possible to do it, you know, provided you can avoid spawn campers and evac campers and get a little lucky. Especially if you go on maps like Bright Sands and you start bashing out going to mine, for example, and getting all the Titan, you can get a lot of money's worth of loot in there, and that'll throw you in with people who may be like really, really good at the game, because they're not only getting all this stuff and maybe have progressed way further, but they're also getting the kills. So I do think in terms of the skill-based matchmaking, a middle ground needs to be reached. Another thing I want to talk about, and it's not really a positive or negative, although it may have negative elements, and that is the map design. I really, really like the maps in this game, I have to say. I think they are phenomenal. There are certain places in the map where you can sort of, I think especially on the Crescent Falls map, which is the harder map, where you can sneak around certain areas, and it's sort of hard to know whether or not they're glitch spots. I presume they are glitch spots because the renders don't even look finished in certain areas, but there's ways to kind of hop on. To say, for example, there'll be a massive cliff separating point A from point B, and you should be kind of going around the outer way and running into monsters to get to point B. There's a way to get on top of that cliff and make your way towards where you want to go, cutting out a lot of that middle ground. And part of me actually kind of likes spots like that, because I like the idea of rewarding someone for really being attentive to the environment. But at the same time, I think you can tell with the design of this area, and therefore many other areas similar to this, that just the way they overview certain like planes of land and all, especially in this one that I referred to being right beside a spawn point, it can make it nearly impossible to get out of the spawn point. So I think things like these need patched, or they need a little more thorough consideration if they want to implement them in a different way. And that actually ties into another negative, and arguably I think the biggest negative of this game for me. I know it may sound like I talked a lot about the negatives, but again, this is for devs to look at if they want. The spawn killing in this game is very bad, and especially on the harder map, it's very bad. I've had so many times where I've had full teams spawn in right beside me. Now, usually the player base, if you're not running into cheaters, especially on the harder map, there seems to be more of a general understanding in terms of what you're there to do. So if someone spawns in and you just go onto the mic and you say, yo, I just seen you spawn in, I'm just passing through, I'm a friendly. A lot of the time it will end up okay. However, a lot of the time I've spawned in as well with blue or purple rarity loot, only to walk around the corner at pumpkin fields to find someone staring me down who's camped there waiting for people to spawn in. And there was actually one point where I went in with purple loot, and as soon as I got out, it was in a foresty area of Crescent Falls. I don't remember exactly where. I think it was near the fallen tree. As soon as I got out of the pod, I started getting shot at in the back of the head from someone who had an ICA, which is an LMG, because this drop spawn point in this little pod you drop in literally goes down into a little crevice where you can be on the hill part above it, staring directly down at this. And he was there watching as this thing came in and dropped down, and it got me. And having you spawn in be so luck based at that point is really not fair, especially if you're running solos, right? There has been the talk of whether or not they'll introduce duos and solos. They've said that they don't want to do it, and I think they're right. I think they shouldn't do that. Their point that they made in their blog post about wanting players to feel like they can run into any type of situation, I think is a very good point, a valid point, and why they should keep it the way it is. But it makes it not worth. I mean, for me, I lost so much money on loot to the point where it's like, right, I'm just going to buy the green guns and green, maybe blue armor every now and then, and go in and get some stuff done instead of running the purple stuff. Because while the purple stuff makes it easier to get kills, at the end of the day, if you're running in with 80, 90s K's worth of loot, and you can risk just getting shot off spawn or running straight into a team of 3, to which point you have no chance no matter how good your loot is, it makes the whole point of it feel very pointless. And it really really pulls back that incentive of wanting to use the good stuff in the first place. I mean, a lot of the time you're thinking this game's, oh, I can't wait to get the good loot, the good stuff, and be going in with the good stuff. But going in with the good stuff almost feels like a burden at times in this game, and a lot of the reason for that is down to the potential of being like completely spawn trapped and killed as soon as you get into the map. And a lot of the time it can happen as well when you're evacing. There's a lot of evac campers who'll throw grenades, play all these scummy stuff, but I don't think there's much they can do to fix that. I think that is the player base, unless they wanted to change the way evacs work. I don't rightly know, but evacs are sort of within your control as a player in terms of how you work around them. The spawn isn't. So having that be luck based, I just think is a very, very bad thing, and they need to have a look at how people spawn in. I think there needs to be a more intelligent game design in terms of looking at where players are based off your spawn, the viewpoints that they have based on your spawn, and therefore dictating where you spawn in the map because of that, or either having a countdown for some reason. Say, for example, they could add in that your pod will self-destruct in 1 minute. So you need to get out of the spawn area and stay out because of that afterwards. And it's client-based, so people who then newly spawn in won't see that ship or see that explosion, but they're able to come in and move through the area within their allotted time safely. I mean, that's just an example. I've only thought of that right there. I'm not a fleshed out idea whatsoever, but it's just an example of some things that could maybe change to improve that problem. Lastly, a problem I want to mention with this game is also the cheating. Now, again, I know this video has been mostly problems, but I just want to address them as best as I can, and I think the devs are very aware that cheating is becoming quite a big problem in the game, because the last patch they'd done, I think not even a week before the beta ended, was just updating their anti-cheat, sort of the main point of it, and I'm very glad that they did, but they have a lot more they need to do. I mean, the amount of times I would spawn in, there was actually a certain name of a player, I won't name it off the bat, but I've been killed by them 3 times in 3 separate lobbies. The cheaters always seem to have the Voltic Brute. I know that there's people obviously who've done well in the game and they have unlocked it, but there's so many people. Every time I see myself getting killed, I think it's called the Voltic Brute, if I'm remembering correctly. It's like the bright pink gun. It's like one of the best guns in the game, if not the best. It feels like every time I get killed by that gun, it's a really dodgy scenario, and I'm pretty sure I've ran into people as well who use walls. I mean, look, ultimately, it's very, you know, you can hear people well enough in the game. Actually, sometimes maybe the footsteps could be louder, but that's a minor complaint. You can hear people well in the game, so if you go hide in a corner and you move around, people can find you, but there was a couple instances in the game where I know for a fact people didn't know where I went. They couldn't have, and yet they came and found me in that exact spot. So there are a lot of suspect moments in the game, and again, I'm not super active in the community, so I don't know from the fans' perspective and the player base perspective how many cheaters are being ran into, but from just talking to people in game, especially on the harder map, everyone I talk to would just start talking about cheaters. I think almost everyone who's played the game now has an experience with cheaters, and having this be a beta and that happening, I mean, it shows the popularity of the game, first of all, but second of all, if they're having cheating problems akin to that of Call of Duty so early, it means on full releases could be a major problem for the game, and would single-handedly be a reason for me not to play the game, which is something why it is very important for this issue to be fixed, and to be fixed quickly. But aside from all these negatives, I went into this game, as I said, could not play keyboard and mouse, didn't think I'd like it because I didn't like Tarkov, and what I ultimately got from this game was it felt a bit like an easier, a more accessible Tarkov with a simpler looting system, albeit loot spawn sometimes being very bad. That's another negative I'd have. Like derelict explosives. One of the challenges was find 6 derelict explosives. I've played the game for 120 hours. I found one derelict explosive in my entire time. I've never found a master CPU either. And I've had keys. I've been looking places, not the best places, but the second best places. So I have been looking. So the loot spawns, I do think they need to be a little more kind at times. But ultimately I went into this game not knowing much about these types of games, not being very good at them. And I came away from the end of this beta after pouring 120 hours in, absolutely loving Borderline every single minute of playing it. And I did stream it for a bit, and I had very good responses from the community. I got raided a couple of times, it was just a really, really fun time, and I feel like this game has the potential to really, really do well, and completely take over. I think it just has that certain element where I think it is more accessible, and if they get a good release of this game on consoles, I think it'll be the way forward. If they can get a good team that are doing good updates and doing them quickly and keeping on top of everything, I could see this game overpassing Tarkov eventually. I think Tarkov is more for an older, more niche audience. I think this game has the potential. The Cycle Frontier has the potential to be more of this style of game, but for everyone. And I really hope it is that, because ultimately I just really, really like what I've seen. And I can't wait to see what the future holds of this game. I haven't been this excited about a game in a long time. My game hasn't impressed me this much in a long time. And I know I talked about issues a lot, but that's just because I experienced all these issues and I want them ironed out, because I want to see this game do well. Because despite all those issues, this game is incredibly fun. And when it comes out on full release, I highly recommend you give it a go. I know people are probably going to get bored of the Tarkov comparisons, but if you've enjoyed Tarkov in any way, then I really do think it is worth giving this game a go, because it sort of adds, I think, a slightly more fun element where you don't have to take it as seriously all the time, and ultimately the narrative and the story and the world it's set in and the general vibe of the game, even the art style, I think is just something that would be quite appealing as a change if you like this gameplay style. So yeah, that is where I'm going to leave it. A fantastic game, has its issues. I hope they get fixed now that the beta is done, and I can't wait for the full release. Let me know what you think of the game down in the comments, whether you enjoyed it, whether you thought it was a buggy, broken mess. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and my other channels that will be down in the description if you want to see more content on the Cycle in future when it does come out. I do plan to stream it when it is in its full release, so make sure to go follow my Twitch and follow me on social media for any updates. You want to see what I'm doing in my life, you want to be a part of this journey that I'm on, even though I've sort of stopped doing it full time for the moment, do make sure to go follow me in those places. You'll see what's happening. I do hope to see you in the next one. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll enjoy the Cycle, because I know I did. Take care. Peace.